Good afternoon. It's Good Friday, the day that the Lord made his sacrifice for all of us, for all time. So if we think back to that day all these years ago, Jesus was crucified at about 9 in the morning, and he hung on the cross until a little after 3 in the afternoon. And during that time, he gave what are called the 7 last words of Christ, or the 7 words from the cross, the last things that Jesus said before he died. They come from all 4 Gospels, and I want to share them with us today, because as we think about the last thing that he said, it gives us a pretty good picture of the life he lived and the life he calls us to. The first thing he said upon his crucifixion was, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." To us, that sounds out of place. To us, we think they knew exactly what they were doing. They were putting to death someone who didn't deserve it. That has got to be the most unjust act in the history of the universe. And yet Jesus asked God to forgive them and said they don't know what they're doing. That is the basic mindset of Jesus. It's not that he doesn't see wrong. He doesn't see sin. It just doesn't make him angry. It just doesn't make him want revenge. Instead, Jesus looks with eyes of compassion, always seeking mercy, giving forgiveness. And he wants us to do the same. The second thing he said was, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." This is what he said to one of the thieves who was crucified with him. On his right and on his left were 2 thieves. One of them hurled insults at Jesus the way the crowds did. But the other stopped him and said, we're being punished for something we did, but this man did nothing wrong. And then somehow he turned to Jesus and said, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." Not forgive me, not save me, just think of me for a moment when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus received him gladly and said, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Some people think that the Christian faith is exclusive and exclusionary, but Jesus was never that way. Jesus always wanted anyone who wanted him. He even wants people who want nothing to do with him. Jesus receives any and all who come to him in faith. The third thing Jesus said from the cross comes from the Gospel of John. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. To Jesus, relationships matter. People matter. So Jesus tells Mary and John to take care of each other, like mother and son. As he calls us to relate to one another, what he's really saying is, stand in my place. Be Jesus to one another. Love and take care of each other, even as I have loved you. The fourth thing he said was, about 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Jesus, God's own Son, God in the flesh, felt separated from God. I think the point of sharing this, and by the way, if I were one of the writers of the gospel, I don't think I would have put this in the story. This is not what we expect Jesus to be saying at any time, least of all in the most important moment of the story. But he did say it, and the writers did record it, so that we would know, feeling separate, feeling alone, feeling despair, that's part of the human experience. Jesus felt that, and it wasn't a punishment for him. It wasn't the sign of a weak faith. It's just part of being human. It's just part of the life of faith. We will also feel sometimes abandoned, sometimes alone. That's part of what this life will mean. The fifth thing he said from the cross was, I am thirsty. Seems like such a small thing to include in a list like this, and yet it shows us something important. Jesus is human. He has real needs. He has emptiness inside. And so he said, I'm thirsty. If you remember the stories of the cross, what did they give him to drink? Wine vinegar. Probably not what he or anyone would want. I wonder if that's a way of telling us the world will never satisfy our real thirst. We have real needs. We have an emptiness inside, and the only way it can be filled is with eternal life. The sixth thing Jesus said from the cross is, it is finished. Now, when he said it is finished, he didn't mean it's over. I've done the best I can and I've failed. He meant, I have completed the task God gave me. I've done my work. Mission accomplished. I don't know that he felt triumphant in that moment. He still had the forsakenness. But in spite of the forsakenness, in spite of all his emptiness, he was still obedient. He did what God called him to do. And the last thing he said is, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. That's actually a quote from Psalm 31:5. And I wonder, as Jesus referenced that passage, was he thinking about the whole psalm and its entire message? Here's what the first 5 verses of Psalm 31 say. In you, Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Deliver me in your righteousness. Turn your ear to me. Come quickly to my rescue. Be my rock of refuge, a strong fortress to save me. Since you are my rock and my fortress, for the sake of your name, lead and guide me. Keep me from the trap that is set for me, for you are my refuge. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Deliver me, Lord, my faithful God. In the middle of feeling forsaken, in the middle of anguish and loneliness and shame, Jesus clung to the trust he'd had his entire life, and with his dying words, committed himself to his Father. As Jesus died, he calls us to live. That's how we find eternal life, by giving ourselves completely, one moment, one day at a time, into trust in the Father. Continue to prepare your heart today on Good Friday, tomorrow on Holy Saturday, as we prepare for the holiest of celebrations, Easter Sunday.